Welcome back. In this lesson, we'll explore how to work with strings even in more useful ways. We'll cover string concatenation, repetition of strings, accessing individual characters, and avoiding common errors. Let's start with string concatenation. Concatenation is just a fancy way of saying we are joining or combining two strings. Imagine you are making a sentence by combining different words. Each word is like a mini string, and by joining them, you create a complete thought. So let's say we have a variable with the name of first name. Okay, let's say we have first name to be equal to, we can have first name to be equal to, let's say John. All right, we have John as a string. All right, and then we have another string, another variable with the name of last name. Okay, so we can say last name is equal to, let's say we have last name to be Doe. Okay, now from these two names, we want to create another variable with the name of full name. Okay, so we have full name. Okay, so we want to create full name from the combination of first name and last name. This is where string concatenation comes in. To perform this, we are going to have first name, then plus, okay, this is plus last name. This is typical string concatenation. We are adding first name, we are adding the first string and the second string, and the number of strings you want to add in case you have more than two strings you want to add. So now let's print full name and see what we have. We can say full name. Okay, we print that. What do we have? Okay, so we have full name to be John Doe, but as you can see, both words are joined together without space because there is no space in the strings combined. Space is a string on its own, so if we want space in between, we need to add space. For it to make sense, let's add space in between. So to add space in between John Doe now, we are going to have another mathematical operator plus, and then we have space. So we have space as a string. Space is a string itself. So if we run this now, we're going to have John Doe with space in between the first string and the second string. Concatenation lets us join strings, but what if you want to repeat a string multiple times? How can you easily do this without retyping same word over and over again? You can use the multiply operator for this. For example, let's say we have a variable with the, let's say we have laugh, and say laugh. Laugh is GH, okay? So we can say laugh is ha. All right, so from laugh, we want to form another variable of laughter. So laughter now is going to be laugh in three places. So we are going to say laugh, right? Then multiply by 3. This is how you repeat strings. You use the multiply operator to repeat strings. So now let's print laughter and see what we have. We can as well get rid of this. That is for concatenation. So if we, okay, I've now printed laughter. All right, so inside of this, I'm going to have laughter. If I run this now, what do we have? So we have laughter to be ha ha ha. This is because we are repeating laugh 3 times. If we want to repeat it, let's say 5 times, so we're going to say 5. All right, so that is going to repeat the laugh string 5 times. So you use addition for concatenation, for joining two strings, whereas you use multiplication to repeat strings. Another thing we can do with string is we can access individual characters in a string. Think of each character in a string as having its own position. We refer to this position as index or indices, which are simply numbers. In Python, string index start at 0, not 1. So to access each character in a string, we use the index of that particular character using the square bracket notation. For example, now that we have first name to be hello, let's say we want to access only the first character. So to, let's say we have print, we want to print just the first character. So we are going to have first name, then we use the square bracket notation followed by the index of that character. And in Python, index are just like positions. They are numbers starting from 0. So we have J to be 0, we have O to be 1, H to be 2, and N to be 3. So to access the first character now, we're going to use the index, which is 0. So if we print this now, we're going to have J printed into the console, right? Let's say we want to access the third character. So the third character is going to be 0, 1, 2. So we're going to have 2 here. Now if we run this again, so now we have H, which is the third character. This is how you access a single character in a string. You use the index, which you can also think as the position, and they are represented by numbers which starts counting from 0 at the beginning of the string. Just the same way you can access a single character from a string, we can also access parts of a string or substring. We call it substring. You can think of a substring like cutting out a small section of a longer text. For example, let's say we have a phrase. Okay, let's say we have a phrase, and the phrase is a string. Okay, so we can say the string is learning. Okay, we can say Python. All right. Now let's say we want to access just the first part of the string. Okay, so to access a substring, let's say we want to print the substring of learning. It's also the same as accessing a single character. When you're accessing a single character, you write just a single index. That is the index of the character you want to access. But when you want to access a substring, we call it slicing. Accessing a substring, we call it slicing. So we are slicing part of a string out of that string. Okay, now let's say we want to access learning. For example, we want to access learning from this string of learning Python. So you are going to write the starting point of that string. The starting point now is 0, which is L. And then you write colon. After the colon, you are going to write the index of the ending part of the substring. So now the index of G is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So the index of G is 7. Now, if you print this, you are going to see something. Let's run this now. Okay, so what do we have? We have learning without the G. So this is telling us that whenever you want to slice out a string, the last index should be the index of the last character you want plus 1. Now we want to stop at G with the index of 7. So that means we are going to provide 8. Okay, so if we run this again, now we are going to have G. All right. If you want your substring to stop at this P, the index of this P is going to be, we have 7, 8, and 9. So if we want to stop it, that means we are going to provide 10, because the second digit here should be the index of the last character plus 1. Okay, so if we run this now, then you are going to have learning P. All right, so that is how you access substring from a string or slicing a string. However, whenever you are accessing a character, this is not applicable to accessing substring now. Whenever you are accessing a character from a string, you should always take note that the index you will be providing should be within the available range. If you provide an index that is out of the range, then that means you are going to run into error. For example, the last index here now from this phrase, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So this means you can access any character between 0 and 14. If you access 14 now, 14 is going to be the last character, which is N. But outside of this 14 index, outside of this range, let's say you provide 15. What you are going to run into is going to be an index error. If you run that now, you have index error because the string index you provided is out of range. You have the range of 0 to 14 to use from this phrase. If you go out of that, then you are going to run into error. However, this is not applicable to substring. For example, let's say we have 0 to, let's say, 18. You know that 18 is outside of the range. The last index here is 14. If you run this now, you are just going to have the full string because all the available string are still within the range. So the out of range error is not applicable to slicing a string. It is only applicable if you want to access a single character from the string. If you run this now, you're going to run into error. So remember these tips when working with strings. You use plus for concatenation, that is adding one string to another. And you use multiplication for repetition, that is you want to repeat a certain string multiple times. Remember to include spaces when combining words. And you should also use indexes to access characters and substrings. But check that the index you want to use to access a character is within the available range. In the next lesson, we'll learn about f-strings, a powerful way to embed variables and expressions directly into strings and combine strings more easily. See you in the next lesson.